Is the SEC championship game dead in 5 years? Because we see Tennessee's baseball team, obviously, they don't care about the the SEC baseball tournament in Hoover, and they shouldn't. It doesn't mean anything. It's getting to the NCAA tournament, the College World Series. Do you see the same thing happening with the SEC championship game within 5 years?
Before we get there, let's not forget Tennessee basketball straight up through their SEC tournament game when they had a number 1 overall seed on Friday. And I mean, just literally on purpose through that game. Go back and watch it, guys. I don't know why you think it's 5 years. I don't really think, I think it'll be this year. I think this year in football, the SEC championship game will have very little fanfare involved. I think you will see 2 teams playing where a first round bye is on the table, but one of them that is a significant underdog probably will say, why try to win this game when I can instead, basically here's what they'll be saying. Say Tennessee goes and they're playing Georgia in the SEC championship game. Say you're playing Georgia, Dave. Yeah. You're Tennessee. You say, I can try to win the SEC championship game against Georgia, which would get me an automatic bid into the quarterfinals of the college football playoff. Or I can throw this game, and then I have to win a home game against, I don't know, BYU or some group of 5 school in the first round of the college football playoff, and that's going to be what gets me into the quarterfinal. Why would I risk injury trying to beat Georgia in the SEC title game? I mean, that's where I'm at with it. Why would I risk injury when either beating Georgia or winning a home game against a group of 5 school gets me the same result into the quarterfinals?
Well, SC Scout God says South Carolina never cared about the baseball tournament. Ray Tanner would start a kid that had never pitched in a game all year, game 1. So that is apparently what they're doing. Football is a different sport, though. You can't go out there and halfway play football or you're going to get yourself hurt. So the reason this is a topic right off the top is because Caleb's won me over. I up until this morning, thought the SEC championship game would hold all of its allure for years and years and years. But I'm now concerned. I'm really concerned. And I think that it's going to lose some of its allure, some of its luster within 2 or 3 years. Maybe not as quickly as Caleb thinks, but pretty darn quick. That to me is disappointing. Baseball and football are 2 different sports. So let me ask you this, Caleb, since you seem to have all the answers. I'm joking. How do you throw a football game? Because if you go out there and go halfway, you're going to hurt yourself. You're going to get yourself hurt. You cannot go halfway. Answer that question brought to you by Don Self. Customer service still matters. For 40 years, they built their business on taking care of their customers. The greater Chattanooga area. Call 423-396-2126. Excuse me. Let me do that again. 423-396-2126. Or go right down below, donself.net. Donself.net. All right. How do you throw a football game, Caleb? Is it just play the backups?
Well, yeah, on the message board, Derek Owen took the words out of my mouth. FSU bowl game model. You don't even have the starters fly with you to Atlanta or travel with you to Atlanta. You take all walk-ons, all backups, and use this as a chance to get your backups some valuable in-game action and say, we don't care. We're just not going to sit there and go all in. You're right. You can't halfway play a football game. Like basketball, I think Rick Barnes, let me be clear.
Hey, either Derek or Caleb won. Help me with the FSU bowl game model. So, did they not take any scholarship players?
Everybody opted out. Everybody opted out. And Mike Norvell didn't even play the main starters that were even there. He he basically hardly played anybody. They barely even practiced for that bowl game. They had a purpose. They on purpose wanted to show up ESPN and tank the Orange Bowl ratings, so they purposely got blown out. I'm dead serious. It was a way to show up and embarrass ESPN. It was actually very much, if you remember, I don't know if you remember this, but Greg Popovich was very angry at the NBA schedule one year. He had San Antonio play like 6 road games in 11 days, and their last game would be at Miami, which had like 4 games in 13 days. and it was Miami at LeBron. And it was totally a setup for Miami to blow out San Antonio on national TV. It was a national TNT game, finals rematch. And Greg Popovich, the night of the game, was like, I'm resting all my starters. I'm not going to play anybody. And it was
one of the first times that this sort of became a thing, opting out, so to speak, of the NBA or college. It was first in the NBA with Kawhi Leonard. Now it's definitely in college. What about the pride factor? I know it sounds sappy, but I'm going to throw this at you. What about the pride factor of you're still Tennessee or whatever school, or South Carolina in your case, SC Scout guy, but you're still that school that you take pride in, and every time you get an opportunity to go out there and win a game, you should give it your best. What about the old sappy morality reasoning? You don't buy that at all?
You don't sacrifice the greater prize ever for that, okay? Ever. And just to give you an example, Dave, now you know how I feel about punting, right? You know I'm not a fan of punting. But within the context of the game, there are times you have to punt. When you punt, you're sacrificing a loss within the game, are you not? You're acknowledging I was not able to score on this drive. Here, I'm giving you the ball back.
Yes.
This is just a punt. The SEC championship game throwing, it's just a punt. It's a punt in the marathon. That's all it is. If you lose the SEC title game. And here's where Tennessee is going to be in a worse case. Actually, this is a great thing I thought of recently, Dave. Tennessee is going to be in a worse situation than most teams in the SEC for this. You know why? Because Tennessee doesn't play. Tennessee's last 2 weeks of November are consistently going to see them play their worst teams on their schedule. It always has been, right? Vanderbilt and Kentucky. So most teams have a really big game the last week in November. Typically, if it's the last week in November, they already know whether or not they're going to the playoff. So they'll know whether or not they should try really hard in that big game. But Tennessee's not going to be in that situation ever. They're always going to have to try to win their big regular season games because those games are in October. And you know this. You don't really know how the postseason, you don't really know what your postseason standing is going to be at the end of the year. So you can't take off in some big game in October. Okay. And you're not going to take off Vanderbilt because you can't afford to lose to Vanderbilt because then you get knocked out of the playoff anyway because you lost to Vanderbilt. So Tennessee's never going to be able to throw a regular season game. But I think this is going to stretch 2 regular season games. You're going to see teams throw regular season games the last week of the year before conference title games. It's going to get ugly.
Maybe I end up agreeing with you there too, but I'm going to stop short of there, okay? I agree with you that the SEC championship game could be hurt. I'm not ready to go with the regular season now. Now, what am I going to ask you to do, Caleb? Since you've thought this for a while, please hit like and subscribe, by the way. We don't have very many likes yet. We'd appreciate it if you'd hit that. But, Caleb, you've been ahead of the curve on this, and I'll give you credit. I'm going to ask you to be ahead of the curve again in 60 seconds. Tell me how the SEC can make their championship game still relevant in a playoff world. The show represented by Banks and Jones. Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks and Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks and Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks and Jones. T. Scott Jones. BanksandJones.com. Caleb, fix it. How do you fix? I'm making you the czar of college football. How do you fix it?
You can make the conference title games potential. There's a few ways to fix it. I don't want to say only conference champions go play in the playoff because then you devalue all non-conference games. But you could significantly reduce the number of wild card teams that get in to where, okay, maybe only 2 wild card teams get in, not 6 or 7 or 8 at-large teams. So that way, if you lose your conference title game, you're in real danger of not making it to the playoff at that point.
Okay. I think I have a solution too that would help. And they're not going to do it, but it would be a formula. So that way you know about where you are and you know you want to improve your standing either for a bye or a home game. So you have motivation to go out there and improve that. If a formulaic that I could look at and say, if I go out there and risk my starters, I can improve myself to a home playoff game. I'm probably going to do that. But if I'm risking my starters and some guy in the math department tells me that I've got a 10% chance of getting into that top 4 that gets a bye, then I'm not going to do it. But I think it largely depends on year to year. But I will agree with you. I will come towards the middle. There's going to be less emphasis on the SEC championship game in 5 years. Now, somebody said, hey, SEC football, somebody said momentarily ago that both teams will do this. What happens if both teams do that? That would be an aberration if both teams are trying to throw the SEC championship game and they're playing a bunch of backups and you're sitting there watching that game that was once, I believe, the greatest spectacle in American sports. And yes, I'm including the Indy 500. I'm including the Super Bowl. I believe the SEC championship game, because of heritage, is that special to me, Caleb. That gives you an idea where I'm coming from. We've only known each other a couple of years. So this hurts me. This makes me angry. This makes me want to change things. And I'm a playoff guy. So I'm a little bit conflicted.
So I'm with you on that. And let me say this, guys. I've said this always about the SEC title. If Conference Championship Saturday that, ESPN and College Football has branded now, that's such a lie. It's SEC Championship Saturday. Nobody really cares about the other conference championship games. They don't have the same spectacle the SEC does. Even the Big Ten. Okay, it's the SEC. Funny enough, Dave, in the 90s when the Big 12 started, the Big 12 title games were always way more exciting as games than the SEC title games. But the SEC title games were way bigger draws because of the spectacle around it. So I'm with you on this. And this is why I hate it as much as you do. And I want it to matter. I want to address this issue. People say conference title winners are going to get a bye. Well, the issue is, why play for the bye? Why play hard for the bye when the SEC title game, resting the SEC title game could be your bye, and then you just have to play a game before the quarterfinals, I guess a wild card round game, and it's usually going to be at home against a much lower team. So the bye is not really worth it. That's what I'm getting at, guys. Mathematically, the bye is not worth the effort you're going to put in the SEC title game when you'll have a much easier path to that same round, which is the quarterfinals, which is where the bye puts you, if you play the first round game against a lower level team. The concept of the bye at that point is overrated. I'm with you, Dave. The best way to do it, there's 2 ways to do it, actually. There's actually 2 ways I could maybe get on board. One, the 14-team play, this is going to be a crazy one. Make the playoff go to 14 teams. And set up the bracket the way you set up the SEC basketball tournament. So if you win the SEC championship, you don't just if you lose, you have to play the first round. But if you win, you get a double bye. Not a single bye, a double bye.
Okay. But then I don't like that because you're getting somebody so incredibly healthy and fresh with 2 weeks in football. I think that's a greater advantage.
That puts a lot of emphasis, but you want to put emphasis on the conference championship game. You want the advantage of winning the conference championship game. Make it mean something.
Well, I do, but I don't want to go that far. In other words, we're both having trouble finding a solution that placates me.
Okay, so there's a double bye. The other one, and you're right, and I don't want to do this, but this is the only other option. People want to.
I got to ask one question for the message board when you're done. Hurry.
Okay. People want to cling to the tradition of the bowl games. You got to chuck the bowl games, and the teams that get buys get home field advantage after their bye.
Don't hate it. I can't really argue with you. Golly, I don't like the double bye either, SC Scout guy. John Major says if UT goes 11-1 losing to Georgia and then loses to Georgia again in the conference championship game, again, he said again twice, do they get in? Well, let me ask you that, because that's basically what it comes down to. That's what the playoff should be able to take into account, is the fact that you're playing in the best conference. So I believe they would if they lost to Georgia twice. I think you're in there. And I think you're actually probably around 5 or 6, because I think Georgia will be around 1 or 2. So let me ask you your thoughts on that. Quality Tire Pro. The Eberle family has been serving Chattanooga's community since 1957. All major brands of tires, full service automotive, brake alignments, oil changes, and more. All work covered by a nationwide warranty. Cherokee Blvd. QualityTirePros.com. QualityTirePros.com. stop by and tell them Off the Hook Sports sent you and say, hey, Bo, how are you? All right, Caleb.
This is a flaw that was actually in last year's Big Ten that could happen this year. So your John Major's scenario, Tennessee plays Georgia November the 16th. You want to know what the final
poster, not the ex-coach, but anyway.
Yes. You want to know what the final 2 regular season games are for Tennessee after Georgia, Dave?
Lay it on me.
UTEP and Vanderbilt. So, and this is the real question. You know what Georgia's final 2 postseason games are after Tennessee? Or final 2 regular season games are after Tennessee?
Lay it on me.
UMass and Georgia Tech. There is a 1,000% chance that Tennessee and Georgia are both winning their final 2 regular season games, right? There's not even a debate.
Agreed.
Okay. What happens if they're both undefeated playing each other November the 16th? They know, say the SEC, based on the SEC formatting, they know that they're both going to the SEC championship game anyway. They're both locked in for the playoff. Why even try to win that game?
You're going to start throwing games in September, Caleb.
I'm saying this is the flaw of the playoff.
Who cares about UT Chattanooga? Go ahead, lose to them.
That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying and this is the big difference, Dave, between, so the NFL, the way they set it up, because people try to bring up the NFL, every game you play, you're trying to get home field advantage because that home field means a lot, right? In the NFL, that being in your, so you don't get that in college after the first round. Now people will say basketball, you're still trying to win in regular season basketball, and it's the NCAA tournament. But the difference is, as you know, basketball, you're not risking as much injury trying to win a basketball game. You are risking a lot every time you try to win a big football game. Are you not?
Yes. One injury and you're done. That's why I don't think you can halfway it. I think you've got to do the complete substitution of playing the other guys.